Welcome to The Flight, a consumable curation of champions and catastrophes that is considerate of your chronometer. Welcome back to another edition of The Flight. It's me, Chris, and I am joined, as always, by Shane, the Diggity Dick Dragon Koski.
Hey,
what's up?
How's it going?
We're going to have a super episode today.
Ooh.
It's an enhanced entertainment system of episodes. But before we get into that, how are you feeling, Shane? Are you ready to talk some Super Nintendo?
You know I am. I'm always ready for some SNES content. Okay. I'm just gonna get right out of front of this thing and say that I don't think most of this is gonna be a surprise to literally anyone. Although I think I'm gonna throw a curveball in there, so we'll keep you on your toes at least a little bit.
And for this topic, we would like to thank Thunderdome Gaming Society, aka Lunchbox, aka the Disgruntled Gamer. They have a great YouTube channel. You should go check that out. They're also a patron, and that's how they suggested this topic for the top 5 SNES games for this episode. And you can also vote on these if you head over to our link tree and find the Patreon link there, which is linktr.ee/retrohangover. So if you want to suggest topics for the flight and vote on topics for the flight, just head on over there, just like Thunderdome Gaming Society did. Thank you. Appreciate it. We look forward to more topics. So I guess that's all to be said here. So Shane,
Yes.
we got a top 5 list to do, and that top 5 list is where we said it's our top 5 Super Nintendo games. Pretty big topic here.
Yeah.
I think this is pretty heavy. I hope I don't fuck this up. I'm very worried about this. But Shane, how about you start out with your number 5?
Number 5.
All right. My number 5 is Mario Paint. That's right. Mario Paint. What I realized about this, by the way, is that there are a lot of, well, I guess I already do this, but there are a lot of very good, high quality Super Nintendo games that I did not have any experience with growing up. So I have a lot of stuff that's just totally going to be missing from this list. So this is very specific to me. But yeah, Mario Paint takes my number 5 because I spent a lot of time just dicking around in the various different like creative modes that Mario Paint had. Well, I shouldn't say in the past tense, I still have it, but I have the Super Nintendo mouse and that hard plastic mouse pad that it came with. And I would just sit and just doodle or do like the, color by number or fill in the colors thing in there. Attempt to try to make music, which usually was hilariously bad. I was never as good at that as some of those people you see on like YouTube and stuff now, just creating entire fucking, orchestral compositions in Mario Paint somehow. That was not me, but I sure did make some funny noises and made that baby one go goo goo gaga or whatever. So there was that. And I also remember playing the mini games like the Fly Swatter one quite a bit as well. Plus, I think it was just the novelty back at the time, because this doesn't mean shit to anybody now, right? Because like we all have computers, we all are used to mice and keyboards and whatnot, but back then it really was a novelty to have a mouse hooked up to my gaming console, and I think that was part of the draw of Mario Paint, was just having it be like kind of a PC but not really. But at any rate, I have a lot of fond memories of playing around with Mario Paint for hours and hours at a time. So yeah, I'm starting off my list with that one.
All right. Thank you, Shane. I do think at this point, we do have to say that we are not being objective here. These are our favorite games. We're not trying to at least I didn't sit down and be like, oh, what do I think the best are? These are definitely my favorite.
No, I don't think we've ever been objective on any of these fights.
Fair point.
Yeah.
I mean, what is objectivity? It's a miserable pile of secrets. Anyway, my number 5, I'm going to start out with here, is ActRaiser. And one of the things about ActRaiser that's amazing is the fact that you do have the two different styles of play. So if you have not played ActRaiser before, the game starts out, I think it starts out, you start in a traditional action platformer stage. You are a dude with a sword, and then you have to make your way through the stage and defeat the boss at the end, much like you would in any sort of stereotypical generic action platformer of the time. It's still good. Like the gameplay is great. Great music, by the way, because it's done by Yuzo Koshiro. And once you're done with that, you go into the sim aspect or the razor aspect, and that's when you get to control like a little cherub angel, and you have a little bow and arrow, and you shoot bad guys while you try to develop the land and have people inhabit it. And you start out your little base, and then you have to move them around, direct them where they need to go, and maybe you need to summon a lightning bolt to get rid of some trees, or you need to, use wind to blow everything out of the area, or use rain to grow crops, that kind of stuff. And that's really appealing. And then once you're done with that, then the town citizens who will bitch at you constantly and tell you they can't do anything without you, they'll tell you that a monster's lair has risen up, and then you go do another action stage, and you do this for a couple stages. I think like 6 or 7 or something like that, and then you just you do a boss rush, which is a giant pain in the ass. But that gameplay loop is so satisfying, and I love it. It's a quintet game, and it's the first game for the Super Nintendo, and it's just an overall very satisfying time. That if you like your action games and you also like farm sims, this is kind of a very early version of combining those two, and I highly recommend it to anybody to check out. It's a great time. So that's my number 5 is ActRaiser.
Number 4.
All right. Well, moving right along to my number 4. This is my curveball. I think after this, everybody's just gonna be like, yeah, that makes sense. But here's my curveball. I've brought this one up before, but mine's gonna be the Lawnmower Man for Super Nintendo. That's right.
Wow.
Yeah. The video game adaptation of the early 90s, was it 1992, I think, 1992 movie about the perils of VR and cyberspace. I just really love this game. Like, it's hard as fuck, but it's another one of those ones that I had played so many times as a kid that I just got good at it. And the funny thing about it is, in deciding to put this on my list today for this episode, I went back and did a little bit of a playthrough again, and I have not touched this game in at least 15 years. And a lot of it came back to me. Like, I was doing pretty well, and then I hit a point where I was just like, oh yeah, no, this is 100% memorization. Like, I forgot how difficult this is. But the thing that I like about it, and I honestly do, like, unironically think this is an underrated game for the Super Nintendo. And it's actually similar to what you were just saying about ActRaiser, in that it alternates between two completely different game modes. So half the game is a fairly standard side-scrolling platformer. You play as one of the two protagonists from the movie. You can either choose the guy or the girl. Don't ask me what their names were. I do not remember. Although one of them is Pierce Brosnan, so that's pretty cool. And
Yes.
you have a gun that basically you can upgrade by finding upgrade items, either by defeating the soldiers that are trying to track you down, and they're like attack dogs and other stuff like that. Sometimes you'll find what are basically points in the form of compact discs that burst out of like trash cans and stuff that you shoot. And if you get enough upgrades, you basically, in what's sort of like a Ghosts and Goblins-esque kind of mechanic, you gain a suit. So it's actually the VR suit that they wear in the movie to enter into this like virtual reality space. But you will gain that, and it's essentially an extra hit, because this is a one-hit kill game. But if you have that VR suit on by obtaining enough points in a level, then you can take an extra hit without dying. And so the side-scrolling levels are fairly straightforward, but they're pretty well done. You also have to fight some really weird shit. Like, there's a boss that is a sentient two gas pumps that like shoot fire at you. So that's interesting. But what really sells this for me is the other half of the game, which is once you finish a side-scrolling level, you shoot this access denied red portal. And once you shoot it enough, this voice clip says access granted, and then it turns green. And that's how you exit into the next level. But once you finish a platform level, every level in between there is a first-person auto-flying level where you are flying through cyberspace, and it is cool as shit. Like, they are definitely difficult in that you need to know how to sort of like quickly navigate around obstacles because you are, like I said, auto flying. You're not really controlling the speed all that much. So you're just dodging these obstacles as you're sort of soaring through cyberspace. But the cool thing about it is that it builds on itself with every level. So the first level is just a really straightforward, just fly through obstacles and don't hit anything. Then the next one is fly through obstacles, but now realize that you can also go up and down in addition to side. So now there's verticality to the flight that wasn't there in the first level. Then the third VR level, you now have a weapon where you have this arm cannon where you will slow down and stop at a couple points in the flight to shoot at these like VR enemies in sort of like a shooting gallery, like mini segment. And then once you kill enough of them, you continue flying on. And so these sections are really cool. And then after you get through that, there's a whole other like flight section where it's not first person anymore. Now you're in a third person and you're controlling like this ship, and it just gets progressively more difficult. But like the environments in those VR spaces are so cool to look at. It's very, early 90s vision of what cyberspace would be like. And it's actually just really well done. And I feel like literally no one talks about it, but it really has a lot to offer. So I probably could have put this higher on my list, but I think once you hear the rest of mine, you'll know why it's here. But I had to include it because I really do think it deserves a shout out.
Maybe we need to do an episode on it one day.
I'd be down for it. Yeah.
Okay, my number 4, I'm just gonna, I know we're gonna talk about this one later, so I might as well just defer over to Shane after I say what it is. And if it's not, I'd be shocked. So just let me know if it's not, Shane, and then I'll talk about it. But my number 4 is Turtles in Time.
Oh, wow. Crazy.
So I can already see where things are going. So I have my thoughts about what Shane's list might be. So I'm not going to talk about it right now. I'll defer my time to Shane later.
Oh, okay.
We can both hash it out. If it is indeed on Shane's list, I guess you'll have to stay tuned to find out.
Number 3.
Well, okay. I guess rolling right into number 3 in the one of the most least surprising picks ever, Super Mario World. I mean, how could you not pick Super Mario World? I imagine it's probably on your list. In which case, maybe you know what, we'll do a swap. Maybe I'll defer Super Mario World to you. I mean, is that fair? Is that a fair guess?
Go ahead and talk about Super Mario World, Shane.
What? Holy shit! Okay, I am flabbergasted. All right, fine. I guess I'll talk about one of the best games on the Super Nintendo.
Go for it. You have the floor.
I mean, honestly, what is there to say? It's fucking Super Mario World. It's fantastic. Yeah. It's like one of the best platformers ever made. To me, this is Mario. Like I grew up with the Super Nintendo being my console. Like that and the N64 defined almost all of my childhood in terms of like video games. So to me, Super Mario World is and will always be like the definitive 2D Mario game. And there have been others that have come since that I think do a pretty respectable job. But ultimately, I think this is like peak 2D Mario as far as I'm concerned. The sprite work is just fucking fantastic. The levels are varied and interesting. There are secrets to find and hidden pathways through the overworld to get shortcuts. And I mean, if you know what you're doing, you can actually shortcut like right to the end of the game in like the second world area. So there's so much there. And it was such a huge step up from, the first 3 Mario titles on the NES that eh, it it just in my opinion it just blew them away. I mean, we already kind of know what the
Agreed.
sort of general sentiment about Super Mario 3 is around these parts, I think.
Well, at
um
least my sentiment, but I didn't know you felt the same way exactly. That's crazy.
yeah, maybe not with as much conviction as you do, but I would say that I do actually tend to agree that I feel like that game is really overrated.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, man. I mean, yeah, there's nothing else that I can say about that you guys probably don't already know. It's Super Mario World. It's fantastic.
All right, before I go into my number 3, I just want to clarify something here. As you could probably tell, Super Mario World is not in my top 5, but this is not a Super Mario 3 situation. Super Mario World's a fantastic game. It just didn't make it in my top 5. I love that game. It's a great game. Not my top 5 Super Nintendo games. Just happens to where it sits. So there you go. But my number 3 game is Mega Man X. That game, I just think it slaps. I can get through that game in like an hour. I absolutely love it. I have so much fun. It's a bit on the easy side. I heard that's a criticism, but I actually think that's kind of why I love it. It's just an easy breezy experience with amazing fucking music. It does so many wondrous things for the Mega Man franchise in terms of how the pace is faster, the action just feels more put together. Like, this is the 16-bit Mega Man experience. I like Mega Man 7, but it pales in comparison to Mega Man X. It's such a good game. I even think that like Mega Man X is so good, it might be my favorite in the entire series of 8 games. Now, granted, there are some stinkers in that series, but it might be my favorite Mega Man game, period. It's so well put together. I damn near want to say it's flawless, it says a lot about the 2 games I have in front of it. But in terms of an action platformer, this is just one tremendously put together game. And I absolutely love it. And if you have not played Mega Man X before, like what are you how are you listening to this? I mean, granted, there's probably a lot of blind spots in my video game library as well. So go play Mega Man X. Do you know the Mega Man formula? You got 8 robot masters. You fight them, you get their weapons, and you go kill a boss. And it's not Wily, it's Sigma, because that's the boss in every single Mega Man game. Oh, and you can learn how to do a Hadouken. You can do a Hadouken in Mega Man X with all these power-ups you get. And there's power-ups you collect. And I don't know. I really hope we do a review of Mega Man X one day, because it is a game I deeply love, as you can tell. But that's my number 3 yeah. I'm going to say Mega Man X one more time. There it is.
Yeah. And you know what? I hope we do an episode on it as well, because that will give me an opportunity to play it.
Number 2.
All right. Number 2. Moving right up the list. How do I want to approach this? If you know me at all, nothing about the latter part of this episode is going to shock you. My number 2 is Contra III, The Alien Wars. And I feel like I've said all I've had to say about this game like many times over in various locations on this show and probably elsewhere. But like, damn, this is such a good game. It's so good. Is it difficult? Yes, absolutely. But it's worth it. It's worth the time investment to see the thing through. Just everything. I won't say perfect, because I don't think anything is perfect, but this game is close. It's the whole package. It's got everything. It's fantastic artwork. It nails the post-apocalyptic alien / sort of demonish invasion aesthetic. It really leans into that H.R. Giger-esque sort of, vibe. The gameplay itself is tight and really rewarding. The sound design is fantastic. The music fucking slaps. Like, the bosses are huge and imposing. The only downside are their attempt at fucking doing that mode 7 shit. Like, if we could get rid of that one desert level, it'd be a perfect game. But there, I guess there's got to be something. But yeah, man, Contra 3 is so fucking good. And that's why it's number 2 on my list.
All right, my number 2 is Final Fantasy 4 or 2 or whatever. I'm just going to call it 4. We know what that means. Look, I even have to say this. Final Fantasy 5 is rapidly approaching this game. Final Fantasy 5 almost made this list. But for now, it's still Final Fantasy 4. It's just such a stereotypical tropic JRPG, but it was released in the time when those tropes were being established. So this is kind of the foundation of everywhere that JRPGs would go for the foreseeable future. It has a nice balanced difficulty. I know, a lot of people for a long time said the game was pretty hard because there's a hard type and the American type, which is easier, but both types are, I think, really balanced. I think even the American version has some tendencies to be a little more difficult in areas because they take away some moves and stuff like that. But ultimately, it doesn't really matter. They're both fantastic games. I mean, they're the same game. But it's just a game that has a very traditional story with more traditional combat. The gameplay is balanced. Every single character has their own abilities and their own strengths and weaknesses that they bring to the party, and they're locked into those, and learning how to strategize around that is critical. The ATB system that they introduced in this game would become a staple up until Final Fantasy 9, and then with 10 they got rid of it, but they kind of brought it back in 12 and 13, sort of. But it's just such a staple of the series in and of itself. You have great heroes, great characters, a little bit cheesy on the deaths, but overall, this is an adventure that, to me, it just speaks to nostalgia. It never tries to get too heavy or serious, but at the same time, it's not entirely goofy or insultingly simple. It is a quintessential, fundamental RPG experience on the console. And that's what makes Final Fantasy IV so special. Not to mention the amazing soundtrack by Nobuo Uematsu. Now, the graphics, they look like a very much improved Nintendo game, at least on the overworld map. You get into the battle map, it's much, much better. But especially the music is much better. But this is an example of when I think I want to go play a retro RPG. This is the game that defines that. And there are probably people who can put this into words so much better, because Final Fantasy IV is a favorite amongst many Final Fantasy fans. Maybe not as much as 6 or 7 or even 9, but 4 is one of those standout titles in the series, and it's my standout title in the series. This is my favorite Final Fantasy game. So Final Fantasy IV is my number 2 for the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, that's a good pick. Yeah, even as someone who hasn't played a ton of Final Fantasy, although more, having done this show for the past several years now, but
you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. FF4 is right up there for me.
Number 1.
All right, here we are. Numero uno, the big kahuna, the big cheese, the number 1 that everyone was expecting. It's Link to the Past, The Legend of Zelda. Yeah, no, I'm fucking kidding. It's Turtles in Time. Like, what? what did you expect? Although I love that we've done a favorite Super Nintendo's games like Flight, and fucking Link to the Past did not show up at all. I'm sure there's
going
to be some salt somewhere about that.
Or Metroid.
Yeah, or Super Metroid, yeah. But you know what? Like we said, this is subjective, and I actually didn't even own Link to the Past for my Super Nintendo. I think I ended up borrowing it from a friend at some point, so I just didn't have the experience with that. But I did have a whole lot of experience with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4, The Turtles in Time, and I played the shit out of that game, and it's in my opinion, and I think it's the best beat 'em up ever. I know that Chris disagrees with me on that because his favorite game of all time is in fact a beat 'em up that is not
Indeed.
Turtles in Time.
It is not.
But to me, I think it's the best one. I love it. I can always sit down and replay it. I will never say no to playing Turtles in Time. It's something that I can get through in about 25-ish minutes, give or take. And it's just always a good time. It is such a well put together game. I love everything about it. I will take no criticisms. Turtles in Time is fantastic.
Yeah, you said it all. That was my number 4. I'm glad I deferred my time to you for that one because yeah, it's a fantastic game. It really is. A little too short, a little too easy. Well, maybe not easy, but we'll talk about that in a future episode. Maybe wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But it's a really fun time, especially with a friend. All right, my number 1. Well, Final Fantasy IV is my number 2, and I love JRPGs. My number 1 has to be another JRPG, right? But
I would
which
assume.
one? Which one? I said Final Fantasy IV is my favorite Final Fantasy, so you know it's not Final Fantasy. But it is a Squaresoft game, and my number 1 game for the Super Nintendo is Chrono Trigger.
Well, I'm glad you said it. I didn't want to get through this entire episode without Chrono Trigger being brought up somehow.
I mean, if we already weren't getting pilloried for, A Link to the Past or Super Metroid, we would have gotten pilloried for Chrono Trigger
or Super Castlevania 4 for that matter. Hey man, a lot of people like that game.
It's not bad, but it's a fine game. But Chrono Trigger is my number 1. It's everything. Like everything I said about Final Fantasy IV, just amplify it slightly for Chrono Trigger. This is everything you want your retro JRPG to be. The graphics are outstanding. The soundtrack is outstanding. The gameplay is outstanding. There's very little flaws with it. I enjoy the story, even though it's simplistic. I do like Final Fantasy IV is a little bit better, but the time travel mechanic I think is handled absolutely perfectly in a situation that could go horribly wrong. Like they don't miss. They mask a lot of things and they do it very cleverly, and making small adjustments in the past and seeing what they do in the future towards the end game and your side quests, like those are nice touches. And even how it affects like the overall plot when you're going through the game as well. It's just one of those games that's special, and it should be. It was meant to be special. It was designed to be special. It did come from the greatest minds of the time when it came to JRPGs. You have Yuji Horii, you have Hironobu Sakaguchi, you have Mitsuda Uematsu, Akira Toriyama. So you have some of the best minds behind Final Fantasy and some of the best minds behind Dragon Quest coming together to make what was supposed to be the ultimate RPG of the time, and they succeeded. This absolutely nailed every expectation you could possibly hope to achieve. So Chrono Trigger, I wouldn't say it's my number 1 RPG of the era. That's probably a hot take what my number 1 is. I won't talk about that today. I've said it. If you watch the streams, or been on other shows, I've said it before. I don't know where, but Chrono Trigger is definitely my number 2 16-bit RPG of all time, and probably my number 3 favorite RPG ever. And it's a special game, and if you have not played it, you need to try it out for your Super Nintendo Entertainment System.
All right, well, there you have it. Our top 5 Super Nintendo games. I don't think there's anything terribly surprising in either of our lists. I mean, Lawnmower Man might have come out of left field for some people, I think, but
a little bit.
Yeah, but I think you know what? I think overall, I think we were pretty on brand. So yeah, if you you know what, if you have any feedback about this or any of our episodes, then the best way to provide that would probably just be to jump into our public Discord, because we're in there pretty much all the time. So why don't you do that? And you can do that by just heading over to our Linktree. So just go to Linktree/Retro Hangover. You can find our Discord, hop on in, get into that episode discussion channel and be like, hey, Shane, what the fuck? Like, where's the Zelda? And who is this man what mows lawns? I do not understand when there are so many other games that are probably objectively better. And then I will promptly boot you from the Discord server. No, I'm just kidding. I won't do that. But no, please feel free to hop in. We always have something good popping off in there. So it is a good time. And you know what? While you're at that link tree, you can check out some other stuff too. We've got our Patreon, which you can hop into for as little as $1 a month to get access to a whole bunch of extra content that we've got out there. We got a bunch just waiting for you. And you can also check out the merch store if you'd like to get some RHP swag. And we got our socials as well as the YouTubes and also the Twitch streams. And Chris, when do we do the Twitch streams?
Well, if you head over to twitch.tv/retrohangover at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, US, on Sundays, you can see us playing video games most of the time. Sometimes there's major events or if you have life events or something like that, we might not be able to make it. But for the most part, if you head over to twitch.tv/retrohangover, 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Sundays, I'll be playing games poorly or Shane will be getting scared by them. And you should head over there for great conversations, great company, especially if you have nothing better to do, because it's Sunday night. What is there really for you to do? You're already depressed because you got to go to work the next day.
True.
At least try to get something fulfilling in your life by swinging by our Twitch stream and hanging out with the fantastic people there who have great things to say. So once again, that's twitch.tv/retrohangover. Swing on by and give us a sub.
Alrighty. Well, I suppose with all that being said, until next time.
Now you're playing with joysticks. Super joysticks.